So I started about 1.5 years ago at Blue Yonder. And for those of you that don't know what Blue Yonder is building something called Predictive Applications. These are applications that are helping retailers with some of their core processes by automating them, including things like setting prices, right? Setting prices that are good for the retailer and that are good for the customer. Replenishment automation, which means always ordering enough so that you never have to turn a customer away, but never ordering too much so that you have to throw stuff away and waste food. And also with targeting, right? You don't want to send an expensive catalog to somebody who's not going to buy anyway. But at the same time, you don't want to send catalogs to customers who are buying anyway, right? So this is again something that we are doing. And could you press space just for the next slide? Okay, so we are working with some of Germany's and Europe's largest retailers. Let's go to the next slide. And is there a chance to get this connected? Okay, so let's get started. I have identified 10 lessons for working with predictive applications. And let's open the valves of wisdom and let's see what happens. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is one of these robots that is going to take away your job. And you should be afraid. Oh. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Lesson number 1, predictive applications are the most powerful way of using data. And on the next slide, you see something that is quite familiar to you. Oh. Interesting. That's macOS X. Does that one work, or? Yeah. Okay, so you don't know this guy, but probably you don't know him by his face, but you know him by his work. Getting a new clicker, perfect. And this, it looks like this. This is Maslow's pyramid, and you all know that our human needs can be categorized in physiological needs, safety needs, a need for love and belonging, need for self-esteem. What most of you don't know is that Abraham Maslow was not just a famed psychologist, but he was also a data scientist. And he said, data has human needs too. So what are the human needs of data? First of all, data wants to be collected. Right? Then data wants to be stored. Data wants to be analyzed. Data wants to, as we have seen in the last talk, data wants to make predictions about the future. But most of all, data wants to drive decisions. And the use of data to make decisions in an automated way, this is what predictive applications are doing. Driving decisions in an automated way based on data. And actually, this is not an extremely novel concept, right? So if we take out our favorite pocket computers, we see that 50% of the apps already have predictive components in it. And this means predictive applications are already here, and they are extremely powerful. Lesson number 2, predictive applications are so powerful because they are faster and cheaper than human work. And I can show you one thing out of our work at one of the large retail customers where we said, okay, let's automate decisions in pricing. And this is the cost per 1,000 price changes. Right? Before, we had a couple of human price managers, and after that, we had a robot. This robot was able to do a lot more price changes in the same time, and this actually looks like this, right? So where human price managers were able to do a couple hundred price changes a day, we are now just doing 50,000 price changes a day. So computers are faster and they're cheaper. Okay, we know that. But what we don't know is lesson number 3. Computers are not just faster and cheaper at making decisions, they're also better at making the decisions. And this is coming as a big surprise to most. And the reason for this is that when we are making decisions, we have a lot of a lot of non-factual, let's say, a lot of non-factual influences that affect our decision making. We have things like cognitive biases. We have things like loss aversion. And in one example, we worked again with the retailer to automate their replenishment. And the status quo was that they had decisions that were good in some stores and bad in some other stores. By using analytics, they could learn from the best stores and double, actually, the quality of decisions. In the next step, we gave them what we call prescriptive analytics. The idea of prescriptive analytics is not just telling people what will happen, but you tell them what they should do. And this, again, doubled the quality of decisions. So in the next step, we decided, okay, can we do better? Well, we can completely automate the process. Instead of just telling humans what to do, instead of telling humans what to enter into another computer, we just enter it into the computer ourselves. And to our big surprise, this has actually led to a 4-fold improvement in decision quality. Because what actually happened was that the computer told humans what will happen and what to do, and humans simply ignored it. Right? So by cutting out the human element, by cutting out human error, we improve decision quality massively. And you might have read this quote by Garry Kasparov, who said that some of the best chess playing teams are made up of computers and humans. And we tried that. And actually, unfortunately, they performed worse. So again, we had humans interfering with rational decisions made by computers, decisions based on data, based on number. And the reason for this is that computers are able to see things that we simply cannot see. Right? Our brains are not optimized for dealing with hundreds or thousands of numbers. They're actually not even optimized for dealing with numbers that are bigger than the number of fingers that we have. Right? And that is largely limiting what we can do. So, number 4. So far, most of the job displacement that happened was blue-collar jobs, right? And nobody here has a blue-collar job. So nobody here has been freaked out about job losses. But what is happening now is that predictive applications are becoming white-collar robots, right? So nobody is working here because there's the robot working. But and I'm not a tennis player, right? So I'm not really threatened by computers. But let's think about it, right? So if I look at the way I spend my time, and I've been tracking my time on the computer since 2007, so for almost 10 years, and about 1/5 to 1/4 of my time is spent writing and answering emails, communicating and scheduling. Right? So this is the definition of a white-collar job. And now we have things, well, no robot could ever do that, right? Except for Amy. Amy is a personal assistant that writes emails for you, that helps you with scheduling. It is taking one of the most critical parts of a white-collar worker's job and is simply taking it away and making it faster and better. So, additionally, about 40% of the work that we are doing is simply driven by habit, right? It is not something that we are consciously thinking about, but it's things that we are always doing the same. And again, this is something that can be done better by computers. So, my conclusion is it is officially time to freak out. Right? You are all here at this conference, but when you go back to work, please make sure that you still have a job, because there might be a computer sitting doing your job. And there are actually numbers of articles, right? There are 5 white-collar jobs that robots already have taken. Everyone is saying your jobs are going to be taken away, and typically journalists illustrate this with really freaky-looking robots. We all know it's time, and the robots are winning. And you can see how they are winning. Exactly. They are not playing fair. So, now that we are all sufficiently freaked out, right? Why is that happening? The reason for this, and I alluded to this, is that most of our decisions are not rational, right? We have a large part of our brain that is not made for rational thinking, but it's made for surviving. And when we think of ourselves as the deep philosophical thinker, but the reality is most of our evolution, we haven't spent being humans or even monkeys. Most of the time we have been lizards and fishes and so on. So our brains are optimized for making fast decisions at a snap. But this doesn't mean that they're always the smartest decisions. Let me illustrate that. So what do you see on this picture? Come on.
It's Mars.
What do you see? A face, right. And when NASA sent a probe to Mars in 1976, and they sent back that photo, everyone in the control center said, "Oh my God, there's a face on Mars, they're out to get us." Why is that? Because we as humans have millions of years of evolution that has trained us to detect faces everywhere. Because everything that has a face has a mouth, and everything that has a mouth can eat you. And if you, well, you don't want that to happen, right? So in 2001, NASA sent another probe. After a bit of thinking, we were sure, well, maybe there are no little green people there, and actually that's a higher resolution photo. So sorry to disappoint. There are no faces on Mars, as far as we know. So this was an example of an irrational decision, and I would actually say it was an example of irrational fear. Right? So one of the biggest drivers, one of the biggest things that is affecting our decision making is something called loss aversion. Right? So you see this brain and this tiny thing over there, that's the part for rational decision making, and this big part there, that's the part for loss aversion. What does loss aversion mean? Loss aversion means, or theoretically, an economist, right, would say, giving you €5 would make you exactly as happy as taking €5 away from you would make you unhappy. Right? That's the economic thought. That's rational thought, right? Plus €5, minus €5, same thing. In reality, the prospect, I can already see you tightening up when I talk about taking away €5 from you, right? But you see me, I'm not really that happy about getting these €5. So loss aversion, the fear of losing something, is an extremely powerful driver. And it is something that we are seeing every day in decision making. Right? So we see material goods planners who are ordering too much because they're so afraid of losing the sale. And that's the same thing. Right? We are afraid of losing our job, and this is why we are exaggerating the threat of robots. However, there will be job losses, and there will be huge inequality in these job losses. So one of the most widely quoted study is this one, which says that 47% of all jobs in the US, and in Germany it's actually bigger than that, 47% of all jobs in the US are at risk of displacement by machines, by robots, by predictive algorithms. One of the interesting things about this study is that everyone stopped reading at the 47% and freaked out. But going through the study is actually very interesting because these scientists have been working with huge data sets. They actually have been using machine learning techniques to classify jobs. Right? You could say when writing this study, they have eliminated already the jobs of 200 researchers by using a computer. So what you see here in these scatter plots is the likelihood of displacement by computers and various influencing factors. So there will be a huge spread. Not every job will go at the same rate, and some jobs will never go, and some jobs will go very quickly. This means the future is already here, it's just not distributed yet. So when I say some of the jobs are going to go first, it's the boring jobs that are going to go first. As simple as that. If your job is driven mainly by habit, mainly by repetition, then this is the job that is most likely to be displaced. Out of the same study, right, this is the distribution of the jobs that have the highest risk of displacement. Loan officers, receptionists, paralegals, retail salespeople, taxi drivers, security guards, fast food cooks, bartenders, personal financial advisors. And there's even a risk for reporters. Interesting, right? So what I did, I said, what does this displacement look like? And this is what it looks like. Right? We have credit tech replacing loan officers. We have receptionist robots in Japan. We have e-commerce sites replacing sales clerks. We have Google building self-driving cars. We have iRobot. iRobot is not just building these nice Roombas. They're also building security robots that can beat you up. Right? So there are machines for everything, and even the journalists. Right? We said there's a risk, and there's a company called Narrative Sciences, which is generating news articles based on raw data. So you give them the scores of a baseball game, and there's a lot of data gathered for a baseball game, and they can write about the baseball game as if they have been there. But there is nobody there, and there's no they, because it's all done in a computer. So if your job has a lot of habit, a lot of repetition, watch out, right? This is the part that will go first. But finally, there are some parts of every job that cannot be taken away. And we've been talking about Siri, and this is what happens when you tell Siri that your cat just died. Siri says, "I'm sorry." That's it, right? Sorry, that doesn't feel the same, right? So things like compassion, things like persuasion, things like understanding, things like convincing people, things like selling to people. These are things that will not go away, that will actually have a more and more important place in our life, in our daily work. And Dan Pink has done an interesting study where he found out that knowledge workers in the US are already spending about 40% of their time in what he calls non-sales selling, which is basically convincing people to do something. 40% of the time is spent in convincing people. And everyone who has ever worked with data knows that just showing people the data, just showing them the facts, is never enough to move them. Right? So in spite of all the fear of robots taking away our jobs, the one thing that they won't take away is our humanity. And the answer to this is be more human. Right? Do the things that no robot can do, which is work with humans, convince humans, communicate. So another thing that is happening, and this is something that we are seeing also in the work with our customers, is that when we have a computer that can make 50,000 pricing decisions a day, easily, right? The important question is, what do you want to achieve? So the question becomes not how do you want to set the price, but what do you want to achieve? So the work of our customers is becoming much more strategic. They are thinking at a higher abstraction level, and they are thinking with less repetition, because they have to make decisions for products and for product lines. So as a conclusion, predictive applications are here already. Predictive applications will change the way we are working massively, because they are better, faster, and cheaper than we are in a lot of things. But there are a couple of things where they will never be able to replace us, and this is being human. So let's all be more human and use the strengths that we have. Thank you.